Why, hi there, I'm Ron Juckett, and he's Drew Douglas. And pitchers and catchers have reported the season is here again. And not a moment too soon. I'm Ron. He's Drew. This is the DoDCast for this 15th day of February 2018. And okay, so the first 2 days of camp, really nothing has happened worth noting unless you're Matt Wieters and his nutritionist and the 25 pounds lost. So what do we take of what's happened so far, Drew?
I mean, I guess no news is really better than some bad news. I saw Scherzer was throwing a pretty intense bullpen today. Probably a little more intense than you'd like to see this early in the spring, but I mean, it's not really surprising out of him. Just glad he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, you really don't want anyone to get hurt. A 60 throw or 60 pitch session the day before camp actually begins. They don't even work out as a team until tomorrow. There was I saw a picture today, Ring of Truth. Is that right? Help me out in the chat there with that. I think it's something that Joe Madden came up with during his time with Tampa that this Davey Martinez, Davey, will use with the Nats, and it's had some of the bullpen people, and I saw Scherzer and Strasburg there in their red Florida uniforms doing that. Probably some team building sessions, and I'm sure that's important, especially with the whole new pitching staff. You know who I haven't seen anything written on right now is Derek Lilliquist. A big first couple of days for him too.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's just spending a lot of time getting acclimated in the new pitching staff. She's very excited to be working with this pitching staff since they're one of the best in the league. So I'll be excited to see what he's able to offer, because I was a big fan of Mike Maddox, and obviously he's in St. Louis now. But like Max Scherzer said, you can always learn something from a new pitching coach. So I'm excited to hopefully hear some quotes from these pitchers on what he is providing here in the next couple of days.
I don't remember Lilliquist's numbers off the top of my head, but he was actually unlike Mike Maddox. I mean, let's face it, he was never as good as his brother Greg. But Lilliquist was a decent pitcher with the Atlanta Braves. I think some other teams too. And so those kind of grinding pitchers are the ones that usually end up making the best pitching coaches, because they've been there, done that, and saw everything.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Nationals pitchers will be able to get some great information from him.
Absolutely. Maybe what they saw. But I think kind of going back from, advanced scouting reports that they might not have seen before, I'm sure that they have started to pick Dave Martinez's brain from what the Cubs had for advanced scouting reports.
I would think so, especially since he's kind of new school and he's into all the sabermetrics and everything. Obviously, Dusty Baker was more old school, so it'll be a nice kind of change of things in the clubhouse.
Do you really think that we never heard about anything? And even last year, when the bullpen was imploding with great regularity, you would hear a couple unattributed quotes, but nothing ever extreme saying about Dusty's losing the clubhouse or that. Do you think that might have been a problem last year or no?
No, I don't think it was. I think everyone pretty much loved playing for Dusty. Obviously, it was a little bit tense when the bullpen was blowing up, because guys would play really hard, get a lead, and then get blown at the end of the game. But I don't know you can really pin that on Dusty. I think Dusty was a fine manager.
Yeah. I think he was too. I think they did a good job keeping things swept under the rug in the clubhouse. I also think that there was some very good clubhouse leadership, especially with Jason Worth. I made the argument a couple of weeks ago on a piece saying that the Nationals should actually, one of the things that I could see Dave Martinez doing is actually naming a captain. I know it kind of seems hokey, and it's not like when the Red Sox did it with Jason Varitek and he put a C on his jersey. But I really do think that in this year of accountability, that having a player accountable as a leader, I don't think is a bad thing. I wish that more teams did it. The Nats expect great things from their players this year, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a Bryce Harper, but someone that will be publicly accountable that says the buck stops here. You obviously have played sports more recently than I have. What is your take on something like that?
Yeah, I think that could definitely work, especially with a whole new coaching staff coming in. I think might kind of ease the transition a little bit if you have a guy like, let's say, Ryan Zimmerman, who obviously has been with the team since they came back to DC in 2005, or like Daniel Murphy. He seems to be a great veteran to lead the club. Max Scherzer maybe. So I think it'd be a great idea. I don't know that we see it done, but I would definitely be supportive of that.
Yeah, and I think when Ricky Keeler and I sat here at the end of last year and just kind of chatted back and forth on through our channels. Um, he was trying to think of something that was missing. Obviously, the player talent was there. Um, the coaching was there. There was no one that you could say that said, "Gosh, that was a terrible coach." And the only thing I could think of off the top of my head was open player leadership. Does it make a difference? I don't know, but the obviously the front office decided that they needed to go in more of a modern baseball direction, and that being uh, knowing numbers, I guess. Change of subject. Non-roster invitees came out. They came out very late. 17 players were invited. Some of them we had talked about before on the show or on the site. Tommy Malone is one of them. Brian Harper, Bryce's brother, and I forget which one is older. I got it wrong on Twitter, and people took me to task for that, so I'm not even going to guess anymore. A couple that caught us by surprise: Cesar Vargas, who I wrote about today, who throws a mean cutter, was in the Yankee system for a long time. In fact, pitched so long in the Yankee system, he was granted free agency. And then he went to the Padres. The Padres signed him. They used him as a starter in 7 games. And then really seems to be kind of a double-A pitcher that can't really make the jump. I wrote about him. Who else caught you by surprise on that list? Jonathan Solano, who we'll be writing about later on this week, as a possible catching candidate to make the team.
Yeah, I think Solano and Vargas were the two big surprises. The two guys I'm really excited to see are probably Solano and Miguel Montero, just because I think they're two of the main competitors for that catching job, along with Pedro Severino, obviously. But I think right now the job would probably go to Montero, partially just because of his veteran leadership, and obviously Davey Martinez has been with him in Chicago. But I'm excited to see what Montero and Solano can offer, because especially with Solano too, because he had a great WBC last year, and I think if either one of them have a big spring, we could see them as the backup catcher out of spring training.
I was impressed with what I saw with Solano last year in camp, and was surprised that he'd been with the organization so long and it only seemed like he had hit his ceiling in Syracuse in AAA. You just never know. Really, if I'm Pedro Severino, you got to realize this is probably his last best chance. The job is open. If he goes out and shows something, he could probably catch 45, 50 games this year, take a lot of pressure off of Matt Wieters. And that really is the whole thing. I mean, we've talked about this before. I don't think JT Realmuto is coming to DC, not for what the Marlins want. If the Astros grab him, more power to them. But I think this is Severino's last best chance to play himself on there. And there are other hungry people, as you said, that can win that job. Montero, not a great offensive threat, didn't put up good numbers with the Blue Jays last year after the Cubs cut him, but playing for someone that I'm sure he admires and respects in Dave Martinez, and he understands that he's kind of running out of chances as well. And Solano is just, there's really no pressure there. Just do what you can do. And see how far you can go. So it's interesting that they're going to have a 4-way battle for 2 spots. I think Wieters is the opening day catcher, don't you?
Yeah, I think he definitely is, unless they were to make a trade and for maybe JT Realmuto or possibly sign Jonathan Lucroy. But of the catchers that they already have in the organization, Wieters is definitely the starter.
Right, and you wrote about Lucroy before, but there doesn't seem to be anyone in any hurry to sign him.
No, he had decent numbers in Colorado, but if you look at his home road splits, he was a lot better at Coors Field. On the road, he was hitting less than 200, so I don't think he's really that great of a acquisition at this point.
And Wieters apparently has lost 25 pounds. You said that he may have gone vegan.
Yeah, he made a comment about that at Winterfest about how he felt really fatigued throughout the season and he wanted to get down closer to the weight when he entered the league. So I'm hoping that'll help him return to form. He was pretty good at the beginning of his career and he was great in April. So maybe fatigue was a big problem for him, and losing those 25 pounds can help him kind of stay in shape all year.
That's a substantial amount of weight. That's more than 10% of his body weight. And I didn't really consider him to be a pudgy guy. Obviously, white uniforms and stuff, and all that gear really kind of masks, no pun intended, what someone's true size is. But he didn't strike me as someone who was overweight. If you can find a way to do it and pass all the P tests that come with that weight loss, because just because someone loses weight doesn't mean that they're working out. And the reason why people, I'm not suggesting this, okay? I'm not suggesting this, but the reason why people use stimulants and supplements is to help recover faster from working out. So hopefully Wieters did it the right way. If he felt he had 25 pounds to lose, maybe that will help with some bat speed, and certainly will help with some fatigue issues. I mean, we saw all the trouble that Steven Strasburg had in the heat last year. Imagine wearing, 15 pounds of catching gear and catching in the middle of the summer during the day in Washington, D.C. That couldn't have done very well for him either.
No. And I think he's already pretty big for catchers, so losing those 25 pounds, I think, will be very beneficial for him, and hopefully we see him kind of return to form in 2018.
I did see that Adam Eaton expects to be back for opening day. I would be very surprised if he didn't. I'm actually looking forward to seeing watch him this spring and watching him getting his timing done. You and I both think he's gonna be the leadoff hitter, right?
Yeah, and I believe Dave Martinez did announce it back when he first got the job that Eaton would be leading off, assuming he's healthy.
Which leads us to our next thing. Who do you think bats second? Keith Law suggests that should be Bryce Harper, and I don't think you and I agree with that at all.
No, I don't agree with that. That seems to be what all the sabermetricians think, and I mean, obviously Dave Martinez is very new school, so maybe he will put Bryce Harper in the 2-hole, but if it were up to me, I would put Anthony Rendon in the 2-hole and probably leave Harper at 3 where he was last year.
Now, the sabermetrical argument, to say even a word, is that you put your best hitter at 2, which if you wanted to go with that as far as getting on base is concerned, maybe that's Daniel Murphy. You hit 340 with that kind of power. I think last year when the Marlins put Giancarlo Stanton at second, he just got red hot and just hit everything 6,000 miles, which was his MO. Bryce doesn't strike me as much as of a 2 hitter. You either use someone who can get on base a lot, which Harper certainly can, but also protects the order from the rest of the lineup, gives the leadoff hitter, if he's speedy, a chance to steal a base while grinding out at bats to give the latter part of the power part of the lineup a chance to see what a pitcher has on a given day. I mean, yes, they're all doing video work, but your video work doesn't help you during the middle of a game. You want to see what a pitcher has live. And a Rendon kind of strikes me as there. A Murph kind of strikes me as someone that can do that. We saw Bryce hit second during the beginning part of the playoffs, and he struggled. And you don't want to put Harper in a position where he's going to struggle or feels like he has to make something happen. Maybe someone in the chat wants to explain why your best hitter should hit second. But that's not something that I would do.
Yeah, I think I would definitely put Rendon in the 2-hole. His hands are so fast, and he can foul off pretty much any pitch, especially with 2 strikes. He kind of strikes me as almost in the Jason Worth mold, where just the ability to prolong at bats and just see pitches for the rest of the lineup, give Adam Eaton or Trey Turner, whoever is leading off, a chance to steal. And I don't know, Rendon just seems like the logical choice to me, but I guess we'll see what Davey Martinez chooses to do.
Right, and I think that, the problem that I think he's going to have is until Daniel Murphy is ready to face live hitting again, he's really not going to be able to get a full indication of what he wants in the lineup because, let's face it, as good as Wilmer Defoe is when he plays every day, he's not Daniel Murphy at the plate, or at least not yet. And so he has to figure that he's going into the season, at least early on, with Defoe as the second baseman and not Murphy. And you treat Defoe differently. I don't know where you hit him. I'm going to take a stab at the opening day lineup, by the way, for Monday for the website. And it'll be interesting for me to try to think that through and try to be logical about it. It's one of the few drawbacks that the Nats have going into spring training is that unless Murphy can recover quicker and get playing before within the last couple of weeks of spring training, he just won't be ready for opening day. The only benefit I could see is that there's a switchover date. I think it's around St. Patrick's Day where pitchers start to hit. That maybe if Murph can come back and at least DH, whether or not, because the only team that they would DH against would be Houston. I mean, there's the last half of spring training. It's a steady diet of St. Louis, Miami, a couple games against the Mets and Houston, but pitchers would be hitting in those games. Maybe the other managers would allow a DH for Murph to get at bats, but your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't expect Daniel Murphy to be back for opening day. There's just really no reason to push him, especially with how weak the division is. The Nationals are all but guaranteed to win the division with or without Daniel Murphy. They just need him healthy for October. So, I mean, there's no point in rushing him back and having him like hurt his knee worse and he ends up out for the year. I would be perfectly fine with either Wilmer Defoe or Howie Kendrick as the opening day second baseman.
That's true. I'd forgotten about Kendrick. When Murph comes back, what role do you see for Kendrick?
I think he'll kind of what he was doing last year, where he can fill in the outfield, fill in the infield. With Eaton and Murphy will probably both get some additional days off this year, just since they're coming off of the knee surgeries and playing every day is going to be really difficult for them. So Kendrick can kind of spell both of them. I think if he's hitting well, he'll probably be in kind of a super bench role, and he'll get more at bats than a typical bench player would.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that Matt Adams will spare Ryan Zimmerman a bunch too. I think it's hard to ask Zimmerman to go through and do what he did again last year, but I think if Zimmerman stays healthy, I think he's definitely a candidate for 30 homers again. And he actually would be my choice if they were to go back to something we were talking about earlier. If they were to go through to actually name a team captain, Zimmerman would be my choice.
Yeah, he'd be mine too. He's been there so long, and I think he still is the face of the franchise, even with Bryce Harper. And I don't know. He's been there so long. Everyone seems to love him. He's a stand-up guy. I think he's perfect to be a captain if they were going to assign one.
Who are you looking forward to seeing most this spring?
I think Adam Eaton, and just see how he comes back. He got off to a great start last year before the injury, and I'll be interested to see how they manage him coming back. Obviously, spring training games don't really matter at all, and so just seeing how much he plays, where he plays. He should be playing left, but I'll be interested to see if they put him in center at all, for maybe if Taylor wants a day off, and see if Eaton can play center. So just seeing how everything kind of plays out with Adam Eaton, I'm excited to see that.
I want to see what Coda Glover has to offer. I'm already very high on Eddie Romero and his future. I want to see if there's anything left for Sean Kelly, but I really want to see, now that Glover had that bad setback last year where he pretty much pitched himself out of the disabled list. I want to see where his head at. I think that if the Nats can develop some bullpen talent, if we get good years out of Romero and Glover, I got to sneeze. Excuse me. I knew that was coming the second I started talking too. If they can get a positive years or positive starts out of out of that, I'm very excited for what this team has to offer in the future. And I'm really am ooh, I lost my focus here. Sounds like something I normally do. I got it back yet?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I'm a firm believer that although keeping Bryce Harper would be in everyone's best interest, that the championship window does not close at the end of this year. And if Glover and Romero can turn into top quality relievers, that's just one less thing that the Nats have to worry about going forward. And I really want to. Ricky was really high on Glover when I first came to District on Deck, and I really just want to see that progress. I loved his stuff last year in spring training. He has the mentality that no one is ever going to beat him, which is what you. And he's a little bit nuts, which is what you want to see from a closer. It'd be nice to see. I'm curious to see what they both have to offer. And I also want to see if there's anything left for Sean Kelly. I know that some of you really don't like him. Up until last year, his career with Washington was very good. I mean, I'm not sure if he was the answer long term. I mean, there's a reason why they went out to Pittsburgh and traded Felipe Rivero for Mark Melanson. But when Kelly was asked to be the closer, he did the job. And I just think it was very unfortunate what happened to him. I remember the pitcher I was remembered earlier. I'm not sure the Nats need another left-hander, but Tony Watson's still out there. Would that be someone that you would try to go after, or the 5 lefties that they have enough?
I'm not sure they need him, but I think he could be a good option. They have some question marks out there in the bullpen. Like you mentioned, Kelly and Glover have both battled injuries in the past. Enny Romero, he's had some control issues at times. Sean Doolin and Ryan Madsen have also had some injury issues. So, I mean, I think they have a really strong bullpen, but there are a few question marks, and maybe bringing in a veteran reliever like Tony Watson could kind of help things out there.
Well, and there's a guy that's not going to cost an awful lot. You probably could do the vesting option with him. I think they would go. That would not be a budget breaker in any way, shape, or form. Mark Zuckerman, who is a lot smarter than I am when it comes to these things, feels that if the Nats are going to make a move before the season begins, that they would go through and deepen their bullpen, and Watson would be a good one. I mean, you and I know just from being general baseball fans that you can never have enough bullpen help. This pen is a lot stronger on paper than what we were looking at a year ago, but it doesn't take much to upset the apple cart. And if they just had that one more insurance policy, I think that everyone would feel better. I don't think handedness matters. I mean, Watson's a pretty good talent. We're both in agreement that they're not bringing in another starter, right?
Yeah, I think AJ Cole is definitely going to be the 5 starter.
And another nugget that Zuckerman dropped on Sunday was that they fully expect Joe Ross to be back. Now, my understanding of how the Tommy John surgery thing works is that the rehab process is 12 to 15 months. His last start was July 9th. So if he goes right up to a year, he would be July before, late June, early July before he would do, I'm sure, a full month of down in Syracuse just to build some arm strength back up, and then be back in August. Now, there's 2 schools of thought here. I don't think AJ loses his spot in the rotation, but if the division is kind of as we expect to be all but decided by then, I could see them bringing Ross back in and then going to a full 6-man rotation for the rest of the way. Knock off a start or 2 from Scherzer and Strasburg and save those for the postseason when you really want them, and see what you have from Ross. But I could also see, because Ross has had durability issues before, that maybe Ross gets a couple starts in September and they shut him down after that. You've actually had arm surgery done. When we've talked about this before, you didn't kind of wave me off to the fact that you didn't think that he was going to pitch this year. Are you surprised that they would even get him ready for this year, or what do you think that they do with Joe Ross?
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear that Zuckerman thought he was going to be ready midsummer because the Nationals have kind of always been fairly conservative with guys coming off of Tommy John. Obviously, Strasburg had the big shutdown in 2012 where he didn't pitch in the postseason. So I think Joe Ross is a young starter that they're very high on. I wouldn't expect them to risk him coming back, but I mean, maybe if he's ready for a couple starts in August and September, that could be an option. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see him at all. Maybe a couple starts, but I don't expect too much out of him personally.
But really, it would take. I mean, because he's not there at the start of spring training. I mean, it's going to take a good 6, 7, 8 weeks to get him ready, right? This obviously needs to go through spring training. I mean, he can do extended spring training down in West Palm Beach, but at some point, he's got to pitch to live hitters. Oh look, I have company. But you would think that. I mean, you're right. I don't expect them to rush him back. I don't see any real reason to rush him back, unless they wanted to go with a 6-man rotation. We talked a little bit about Cesar Vargas. We know that Tommy Malone is Reclamation Project of the Week. Edwin Jackson is back. None of those three you think have a realistic shot of making the team, do you?
Not out of spring training. I think there are options if someone gets hurt. Maybe if Eric Fetty's struggling in the minors, you go to Edwin Jackson if somebody gets hurt. But yeah, I don't think any of them are on the opening day roster.
Right. I think the most likely out of those would be Edwin Jackson. And so I'll ask you this: assuming if someone gets hurt, and we had a lot of that last year, the cat is not interested. We had a lot of that last year. Do you go with Fetty or do you go with Edwin Jackson?
I think I would go with Fetty and at least give him a couple starts. If he's struggling, then maybe you go to Jackson. But I mean, I think at this point you kind of know what you're getting from Jackson. He gave them a few good starts there at the beginning of his national stint last year, and then he kind of turned back into his old self. And I'd rather see what Fetty can do at the majors than give Edwin Jackson another shot at this point.
Yeah, I would think that they need to see what they can get out of Fetty. I'm sure we'll see him 3 or 4 times this spring. I'm curious to see if he's developed an out pitch. He didn't seem ready for the majors when I saw him pitch in spring training, but my certifications are none. So it's I'm just watching it as an observer. And when he finally did come to the major leagues, he sorely lacked an out pitch. It was kind of like Urias a couple years ago with the Dodgers, coming up and thinking your stuff is good. And I remember watching with Urias, and I saw the same thing with Fetty. It's like, I can get these guys out with this stuff in the minor leagues. What's happening? Well, you need to develop an out pitch. And that's not necessarily a strikeout pitch. It's, something to ground out, something that's going to be a line out or something like that. Last year that was missing. Hopefully Fetty can find that. Jackson's a nice insurance policy to have, but that's much more like an Aflac insurance policy. Okay, so you'll be able to make the car payment if you get hurt, but you're not buying a Lamborghini with it. And
I expect a big year from Fetty just because they have all new pitching coaches throughout the entire organization, from like low A all the way up to the majors with Lilliquist and the Nats. But I'm hoping that'll help him develop an out pitch, because I agree with you. He just wasn't ready last year. And also his 2 starts, he pitched against the Cubs and the Rockies in the majors. So he's pitching against 2 of baseball's best lineups. And he didn't fare too well, but I don't think he was ready, and he's facing some of the best hitters in the league. So I think he is better than what we saw.
The start against the Cubs at Wrigley actually was a better start.
Mm-hmm.
I think he stated Dusty did what he did, leaving pitchers in too long. But that start kind of went and go, okay, he's close. He may not be there, but he held his own against a pretty tough lineup. And want to send our thoughts and prayers and condolences to, speaking of the Cubs, is Anthony Rizzo is from that high school down in Parkview, Florida. that had that tragic school shooting. So he left Arizona to go. I believe he's speaking at a community vigil tonight. What a tough job for him. Just unbelievable. All right, let's see. Anything else? Harrisburg has signed another 2-year agreement with Washington, so the Senators remain part of the Nationals. Seems kind of fitting, doesn't it? And I believe they're starting to eliminate teams not teams, but cities for the new ballpark for the Potomac Nationals. So hopefully that gets resolved and they stay there. As far as the AAA team is concerned, yes, the AAA Nats team is owned by the New York Mets. Makes no sense to me, but it's Syracuse. Rochester, by the way, did sign a lease finally with the Twins, so there's no sneaking over next door to Rochester for next year. My thought is, and we'll probably talk about this 2 or 3 times, is that they'll leave the International League. I don't think there's really a franchise open for them. Oakland's AAA team is in Nashville, and Nashville is somehow in the Pacific Coast League. Because if you know your geography, Tennessee and California are really close together. Actually, what happened was when the old American Association folded, most of those franchises went to the Pacific Coast League. And so there's a whole division outside of the West Coast that's in the PCL. So my guess is with the Mets leaving Vegas, that Oakland will take Vegas for the 19 season. It seems to be the trend for Oakland franchises to move to Vegas. And that the Nationals will settle in Nashville. Really should be either Richmond or Norfolk, but that's my guess. It'll be Nashville. I think it's pretty much it. So next week, hopefully, will be once the first game. The first game is a week from today.
No, it's the 23rd, so a week from tomorrow.
Which is a week from tomorrow. So the next time that we're with you on the DoDCast, it'll be kind of the night before opening day. It'd be like Christmas Eve. You get to be excited because you might get to open something tomorrow, but really not, unless you're really good and your grandmother says you can. So everyone will be reported by then. Hopefully we'll actually have some news and actual stuff to talk about. What did we run on the website this week? I did a piece on Cesar Vargas for today. Drew has talked about whether or not JD Martinez or Jake Arrieta will be a good fit. I did 5 storylines for spring training. So lots of goodies if you haven't read them on the website at districtondeck.com, which is where you can follow us on Twitter at District on Deck. Give us a like on Facebook at District on Deck. And of course, like and subscribe here. So we'll be with you next Thursday night at 9:00. And then I forget, it is televised. That opener is televised on at least MLB Network. I don't think it's a massing game. So, and I don't think that do they black out those games for you down there?
I don't think spring training games are blacked out.
Right. So some of those games will be able to be seen there. And that reminds me, I have to set up my TV and make sure that MLB.TV works and all that. So only one more week before we get down to action. I cannot believe it's not listed. And I cannot believe that the game against the Twins in DC is not going to be televised.
Yeah, I would think that game is definitely televised. It's always been televised in the past.
Can't imagine. I mean, there's a reason why you do that dress rehearsal game at home. All right, so that will take care of it for us. So for our wonderful staff of District on Deck, he's Drew, I'm Ron. We'll talk to you the next time.